Today on the podcast, I had Andy Sitison. Andy's got kind of an interesting background. He would talk to you about his lifelong passion around music. Then he got a psychology degree, and then he got into data. And basically what he runs today is a company that basically looks at sentiment analysis and a whole bunch of different things using AI to figure out like trends. And it could be anything from onboarding process to somebody talking about a new product area or category. He's got about 50 different AI models in the cloud that basically are looking at this information and the intake of it and then synthesizing it to figure out the trend lines in it. So pretty interesting business. Today, it's a lot of services. And so they're kind of heavy on the people and the tech. And really, he's going through a transition to really evaluate moving that to more of a self-serve model over time. He was super vulnerable. He was super honest with me. And it was just a fun conversation. So I really hope that you enjoyed as much as I did. Andy, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you making the time.
Oh, man, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, good. Well, maybe why don't you start a little bit about your background? You seem like a similar age to me. You've been through a bunch of different kind of epochs from a technology standpoint. So maybe you talk to me a little bit about kind of what you've been doing, how you end up in the current spot you're in, and kind of maybe some of the highlights of the journey to getting here.
Yeah, it starts with being a musician, but I won't go all the way back there. Got a couple instruments back there.
Yeah.
40 years struggling musician, I think, at this point. But I decided in college I wasn't going to do that. Got a psychology degree, and then decided I didn't want to listen to people tell me their problems, and was more of an analyst. And so I opened a restaurant, and then I started getting it figured out. My wife was at IBM, and I went back, got a master's in data management and all the data and business MBA. And I went and worked as a system integrator. So I spent about 15 years just going out and, working in manufacturing plants, new drug development, and little nuclear work, and, just helping stick systems together and help people. So a lot of people, process, and technology. Then I did my stint at the big high tech and, thought I was traveling too much as a system integrator. And I thought, well, I'll go to one of these big high techs. And then I really traveled and kind of had all of Americas, Latin America, all of Americas. And then I had a global position with them and kind of business app space of a big high tech. And there was some acquisitions going on, and I jumped out of the plane and took a sabbatical and said, you know what, I want to get back to creating. I entertain people more than I, develop or create, and I'm a creator. That's why I'm a musician, why I'm all these other things. And so I went back and said, hey, let's do this whole data management, machine learning, AI stuff that's coming out. I'm a data guy from the old days and
Yep.
DBA and everything. And the rest is history. I took about 4 months and after the sabbatical and kind of taught myself the math and code of AI and building models and all that. And then I was part of TEDx in town here in Richmond, Virginia, and that came off the stage. And my partner in this one startup was also part of TEDx. So he was like, hey, I'm collecting stories, doing all this stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm doing AI. What about long form text, right? Like, let's start talking about how we can analyze, and bring technology to your venture that he was working on. So that's kind of a really quick fly through of me being in the emerging tech world for many, many, many years.
So talk to me a little bit about share more stories. So is it a combination of storytelling with the AI component, or is it something different?
It really is different. Although if you come down to it, it probably isn't. It's not about storytelling, and that's the problem with the name a little bit. Because everybody hears the stories and they think, oh, this is the guy in the library telling us stories about, no, that's not us. We're an AI company analyzing long form text, and so it's probably a little both. But what's really cool is it's really about empathy. It's really about voice. It's about imagine if you're trying to do something difficult and you're trying to figure it out. Like I was joking, what if you're like working on an engine on your car? Like you can see the parts, you can get the part diagram, you can figure this out, but where's the wisdom, right? Like maybe there's a YouTube 10 minutes on it. Well, you probably needed 5 hours, maybe 2 weeks on it. You don't get all that, right? And so how do you find that next level of understanding? And that's what we do. All that's going on in the marketing world is good. I mean, that promoter scores and everybody's matured those models and surveys and all this stuff. And I'm not negating in the value of any of that stuff, but sometimes you need to hear the voice of the community you want to connect with, and that's where we come in. Is help. Surveys help you answer the question you asked. What we do is help you figure out what questions you should be asking, and helping you hear what your community needs from you. And so, and that might be a minority tourist group, that might be middle-aged women working with their aging parents. Just so happens to be a couple past projects. Or it could be, it could be just a sports drink that they want to, get different kinds of perspectives on how people like it and use it. And so what we do is ask a question in the context of that. If it's a sports drink, why are you exercising? Not what exercise do you do? What do you like about the sports drink? Why are you exercising? And so they get to tell us, what is that essence of doing it? Does it give them identity? Does it give them joy? Does it give them health? Does it help them lose weight? What is it that it means to them? And then we start to know why they're doing it. You can start to think about what your sports drink should do for that person and that community. And so kind of as a quick version of that, what we do is collect those stories, and then we do that with a web app. So we have a web scale capability kind of going between quantitative and qualitative space. We're kind of splitting the middle of that. And then what we do is run about 55 models up in the cloud that are category models. And what we do is look for evidence in the stories, evidence of joy, evidence of activity level, evidence of need for stability. And so there are motives or attitudes. And those are ranked on a very low to very high scale, kind of a Likert scale ranking. And we've been doing that about 8+ years with large language models, not generative AI models, not GPT, but large language models, which is a slightly more generic message about that. And then recently, obviously, we've been doing a lot of GPT work too, putting those in and helping tune them to just work with our stories, but to have the creative knowledge that Gen AI can do to pull, the complexity out of those stories and to be able to share that with our analysts and our customers.
So do you, is your customer people that are going through kind of customer discovery and trying to figure out exactly where their product fits, like whether it's a beachhead, customer segmentation?
I think that's a good one. I mean, we've done everything from, a company that was going to hire over 1,000 employees in the next year, do a new hire study. So they wanted to know how that was going. We've used our technique to talk to healthcare workers that are, over a course of, a couple of years, and we'll do incremental check-ins with them to see how, maybe there's a major change, maybe there's a major governmental change, or, something like COVID or whatever, some kind of event is happening. And so you're checking in with that group of people over time. Or it could be, hey, we've got a new product, or we're having a massive change and we want to know how it's going to impact the world we're going into. I mentioned the middle-aged women. Listen Ventures was a partner that wanted us to help them. And what they did is studied the middle-aged woman. And, it's a publication out there that people can, one reason I like sharing it is you can go find this story. Mm-hmm. Life in the Middle, I think, is what the name of the title was. And okay. It was profound. I mean, you think about it, there's no one more important in the lives of Americans than the middle-aged woman. She's got her spouse, her kids, her parents, her pets, a job. This person is a big connector for us all. And to hear what that person cared about, spiritually, personally, emotionally, what the consumer-wise, everything else, and to get that from a collective set of stories was really powerful, to put that into context and then to put it back out to them and say, this is the voices you shared. And, that's starting to shape the way consumerism is working around that constituency.
So would you kind of classify yourself as like Qualtrics, but it's like personalized? I mean, Qualtrics does some of this work. I was at SAP, or got acquired by SAP, and Qualtrics was, coming in about that same time. There's elements of this, but basically it seems like it's doing a custom version of this for the specific need they need.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job of finding someone in the same playing field as us, and we are. I wouldn't say they do what we do, but we both start to solve a similar problem set. Obviously, a much larger group of
Yep.
people at Qualtrics than us. And by the way, that global tech job I was talking about was an SAP related tech job.
Okay.
I ran their business practice around SAP, so I
Okay.
know that space a little bit.
Yep.
But that's a tangent. But yeah, I think Qualtrics is a good example of someone starting to attack this same problem. Like, how do you? It's something more than surveys, and
Yep.
so I've heard of empathy AI is coming out.
Mhm.
There's that kind of perspective. But to me, it's about what is the balance of humans with technology as we go into this new inflection point that we're going into.
So let's maybe take us to the next level, which is really talking about like human-centric AI. I think the first use cases that we've really seen are pretty cold, just analytical, right? Like throw a bunch of data in, get a bunch of answers out. And so you've kind of really defined this around human-centric AI. So maybe tell me a little bit about what you think you doing is different and how like that is changing like the outcome that you're getting versus people using just traditional tools to get data out.
Yeah, I think so. Its intent matters. I think your culture as a company matters to what that means. And so for us, it is about human plus digital. Like we everything about it's cellular in us. About everything we do, our services, our products are designed around that. And part of that is about starting with trust so that we can get authentic responses. You were at big corporations doing those autonomous surveys. How many times did you really give them what you wanted because you weren't really sure if your boss ever got a copy, or at least the director. Surveys can be manipulated because of human reasons, right? And so that's one thing that we work on very diligently is creating an anonymous resource to, people have a username. We validate people are human, but the researchers and the customers only see a anonymous username to that content, so they can share what they want to share. And going forward, like what we do is one of the big things we do is the scoring we do. We have about 55 of these models running up in the cloud, and those are emotive based scores or attitudinal scores, things like joy, anxiety, obviously sentiment, like we all do, but there's 55 of these scores, and we don't only score. We look for evidence in the content, like what is there evidence of joy here? Is there evidence of sadness? Right, so it's very low, very high categorization, and that right there, it doesn't give us a personality of the person telling the story. But if we put 300 stories together, we start to get a personality of the community of that group,
Yeah.
right? And so you start to see in the context of time and the framing of whatever your prompt was, right? Like if you're asking them about long-term care of their elderly parents, that's the context that they're going to talk within and where we can pull evidence from. And we don't only pull that base scoring, but then we look at like feature analysis across those scores. Where is the variance, covariance traveling amongst the data? What's happening in that complexity of the interrelationships to hint at things? Because this is a dull tool. We're not telling you yes or no. We're pulling out things that we're seeing and saying, what are these tea leaves telling us, right? And then our customers use that to go back and say, I'll take that to the context of all the other data and come up with ideas.
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit on kind of my next question is this is pretty nuanced, right? You basically are collecting a bunch of data, and your domain expertise in this area is really the ability to kind of pull out the trend line in it. And so help me understand how you have the customer involved in the curation of the questions. You guys collect the data, and then basically, are you giving them reports back, or are you just giving them access to the data to like interpret it and draw the conclusions to take action on?
That's a great question. As the techie of the group, the scientists of the group, I always like them. I want them to dive into the data with me. Most of them never want to go as deep as I want to go into it. Never. You know that as an SAP guy. So give them the answer. Let me back up a second and say we have what we call a learning roadmap is the front end of this process, and we call it iterative learning, right? Like you're going to engage, and it's a point in time. It's A to B to C, And you might do one project and not do any more. Maybe that's all you needed. Maybe it's a new hire test you want to do or whatever. But a lot of our customers will do multiple steps across time and possibly in different directions, different demographics maybe, or different products or whatever. And we're moving the product from a project services business to more of a self-serve business. I'd say it's going to take us probably 2.5 years to, naturally do that. And, we're kind of friends and family funded, so we haven't had the pressure of the big money drop on the back of our backs yet. And so we're driving that in. What we're getting to your point of research, a couple of things have happened. We used to give just kind of top line reports and reports out the door, and then we'd have some solutioning. Well, we've learned that customers almost always want us involved in the solutioning. So we've stepped up that part of the process, more consultative. What are we seeing in that data? Like we used to try to be very, unbiased. Here's what you get, and like not really comment on it. And they were all like, stop doing that and tell us what you want, what you think. And, so we've engaged more, and we have some domains that we're true experts in. Some of our research teams come in from, 10, 20 years in that space. So it's easy to be in that space, but also GPT is showing up at the table, right? So what we do with GPT is we lock down on those stories with instruction sets and agents, custom agents is to lock down on, and RAGs, but let's be honest, RAGs don't do it for me in this scenario, but, we lock down on that data set, and then we start asking questions, themes, improvement areas, all these kinds of things you can pull from GPT. But it also is better than that. First off, it's usable 2 weeks in. We don't have to wait 6 weeks to start generating reports. We get 10 stories in, and it can already start to find things. Do we have the gender balance right? Do we have a trending going on in that data somewhere? And it's just how creative and orthogonal you can get to ask the questions to pull it out of it. One thing I love is, let's say we're coming into the closeout of the product, and I'm typing away, work 20 minutes, 30 minutes on it, and then at the end I'll say, I've asked you all this stuff. Of the stuff I didn't ask you about, but you think the content tells you that it's important, or you see it a lot in the data. What should I have asked? What should I know about that's in there? And that's really delivered some profound stuff. Like, we've done some work with YMCA, a great company, a different company. A lot of times when we're looking at scoring, if you're in a corporation, you'll see achievement, advancement, and altruism, or compassion track opposite. They have like a negative correlation.
Correlation,
right?
Yep.
Classic, right? But at YMCA, they actually have the opposite. They track together, and it's because it's a slightly different culture there. Yep. And one thing it came out, mission-driven company. And the thing that popped out with in that one of those GPT sessions was, I was like, what should I ask? And they said, well, volunteerism is a reward in itself. That a lot of the employees are coming back saying the fact that I'm doing this work is payment, is partially my payment. And great point, right? Like, I didn't think to ask that. And that became, I don't know if it changed the world, but it was a cool data point on the whole thing.
So maybe talk to me a little bit about, these models, especially in the ChatGPT or like the new models that are coming out. They're a little vanilla. They're super nice, right? They're not very critical. And so talk to me about like what they do well versus what they miss. Because, they're general horizontal, like Swiss Army knives, right? And I think what you're going to see over time is way more precise, specific, focused. And we're not there yet, right? I mean, I see very few companies that are starting to subdivide this and saying, I can build a LLM that's specific to my need, and I can make it way more depth of my specific area of focus.
Yeah, let me see. Let me try to keep up with all the little points I just wanted to make there. One thing we're doing is we're implementing our product. I'm calling it a cellular deployment, and it's because we're not sending up a stack. And I have to remind our internal team this too, that you might see something called Seek GPT, which is our app, and it is maybe it's technically a platform, but it's being deployed in context of whatever it's doing. Like if it's working with the customer executives on their learning roadmap and helping them think about what they want to prompt against, that's going to use a different context set, a different instruction set than if it's doing the project reporting, right? So they end up becoming like you said, very specific deployments. And that every time you can tighten it like that, it gets better because it's all about context. I think a lot of the failures, I mean, GPT fails really bad if you're just getting into it. Like, I mean, it loves to tell you, I tell my wife, I'm always decisive. I'm just not always right,
Right.
like, and so are they, right? I know how they think. Um, but the more you get to where you can focus it down on content, focus it down on a data set, and say, this is your framing. This is our users, this is our projects, this is our stories, this is our scores. Explaining this, treat it like a human. This is the first time I've ever recommended you take tech and treat it like a human, to the point where I yell at it. Like because it gets so nice, I literally cuss it out. I will, you got that completely wrong. Stop doing that. You can't do that ever again. Stop it. Like I yell at it. Like maybe I shouldn't, but it feels good. Yeah, and I frankly think you have to get mean sometimes to get it to break some of the silliness that is kind of inherently built in. I'm just sharing stories, but really, to me, it's about context. And like most of the failure points, when I see it failing, it's a function of it's kind of lost where it is, and it's trying. Like we were getting these totals wrong, and we were feeding it participants, and then you have the status of, well, some are approved, some are not approved, some have written stories, some have not written stories, and then you got genders and demographics, and you'd ask it a question, you get there's 45, or there's 300, or there's like, where are all these different numbers coming from? Well, it's just in that moment choosing to look at this section of it, cross section, and then it'll flip it and use it. So it's very important to keep it simple, stupid, right? Like, if you want accuracy, you just have to really pinpoint. To your point, I'll shut up with, that idea of being very specific and pinpoint it down is proving to be the way we're successful in this current moment of using them.
Have you, like, what's your mixture of, if you're working with 50 different models, are they like some combination of commercial versus open source?
Yeah, I mean, those models are primarily based off open source large language models, things like BERT and Elmo as we've come along, those kinds of things. But Hugging Face is a friend of ours, right? We've got a fair amount of that running around. With that said, we use a bunch of the GPT models, and we're playing with it, everything, because the way we see it is there's not going to be one model that wins. It's really about our value is going to be how do you navigate what is available. So we're looking at ourselves as an overlay function to that, and have a business mission to deliver no matter what the tech stack looks like under it. So, and it's a little like mainframe. You remember I'm too young for it. It doesn't look like it, but the old what they call it, the time sourcing or time sharing on mainframes, like
Oh yeah,
the baby boomers, right? They had to check in and do their time, and they'd get their 5 minutes. Well, that's essentially what GPTs are right now, right? We don't own them. And matter of fact, they're not as fun, because I started doing AI. I was like doing machine learning. I was doing algorithmic work. I was working on global minimums and all sorts of fun stuff. Now I'm just an API guy again. Like I'm just writing code to a model in the
connect
cloud.
things.
So, it's changing fast. And so we're spinning plates and tap dancing a fair amount, but it's working.
So maybe talk to me a little bit about the workflow component of this, right? Like, I mean, you see a lot of people having interesting focus on either building their own GBT or using an open source or really training it to do something very specific. But really what's missing, or people are starting to use, is whether it's NHN or LangChain or some of these other ones to actually create the conditional workflow to actually get work done. So how much, like, is that what you guys are using too? Or is there some other layer that you're trying to do to like automate some of this?
I mean, I love it. I love your thinking, and we have done some LangChain work. There is rudimentary versions of that, but I'll be honest, we use way too many humans still. And we're, like I said, we started as kind of a project services organization and hope to move to a tech. And that's really a big, and it's not a case of, like people talk about losing jobs. It's not about losing jobs. It's about growing at scale and doing things that humans shouldn't do anymore, like the painful, stupid stuff, right? And the stuff that can create inconsistencies, right? And so one of our challenges has been the way people use this in the context of how they wanted it has been different. when you're recruiting people to share a story, that can be a reasonably easy thing to do or extremely hard thing to do, depending on the demographic that you're looking for, right? And like, I'll pick one like indigenous peoples. Like, we've done some work that way, that kind of space, and there's a layer of context to deal with as part of that you just don't rush into. Otherwise, you might, middle-aged women talking about their elderly parents. We're doing some long-term care work right now, not that one, but a new one. And those are the people that kind of like, hey, I'd love to share you my story. It's like, I need to get this off my chest, right? So there's, sometimes that's different. And because of that, it leads us into different workflows as part of that process. But, if I net it out, we're doing a lot of project management work that is just making sure the I's are dotted and everything falls in the right places. And I love to, and like, I've got some batch stuff sitting on this Linux box right over here that I still run that at the end of the project that needs to get to the web. And, so we got our work to do still. Yeah. But I would like, LangChain's good. I enjoyed it. We've got some stuff like that in and great product line. So definitely on the list.
Just out of curiosity, and if you're not comfortable with this, is fine. But I look at our business, and I think that 30 to 40% of it should be automated, like full stop. And so, I don't know if you think that a lot of and again, to your point, this isn't about disrupting a job and eliminating it. It's moving those people up to doing higher value work and getting rid of the stuff that's monotonous, rinse, lather, repeat, and basically automate that as much as possible. Do you think that that's a similar number, or do you think it's higher or lower?
I'd love it to be higher. I'm an automation guy. I've been doing it a long time. I feel like everything I've done has sort of been in that space. And I've never been I've done this long enough that everybody says, we're going to fire, everybody's going to lose their job next year. That's never happened, never going to happen. Yeah. And AI is interesting. I think we'll have a lot of transformation. But so back to your question, I think we originally did everything we do as a human, and then just the analysis was technology. And I early on said, hey, I want to build this web app, right? And it's going to give us the scale. It's going to be a companion, if you will, to this process, and we'll be able to collect on web. And we finally got that done, and it's changed the world. All the things we knew it was going to do for us was there, but it did more, and it made it so much more accessible to people. But it's still not something you download off Google Play or Apple Store, right? It's still it's a web-based application hit primarily by URL. So we still have more we can do to make it more accessible. And right now, our tool is productive, but it's not designed to be entertainment. So our participants aren't going to get in there and hang out right now, but I can see a value in that. Our customers aren't going to spend a ton of time in there, but I'd love for them to, right? Those are some of the developmental areas we'd like to get to. And so automating the other parts allow some of this to happen. So we're torn between automation and presence. I guess I'll call it app presence and self-help onboarding and all that stuff. We're just a constant, a little bit of this, a little bit of that to get further on the charts, if you will.
But the long-term goal is to make this less of a service business and more of a product business. Is that kind of the long-term goal?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to be a SaaS model and go that route, but at the same time, we didn't believe it would work, and the attempts to make that happen faster actually almost bankrupt us cash flow wise. It was without making the big bet on the capital. It just didn't work out right for us, and I think it's good. Like what we need, we keep growing the funnel, we keep growing the customer base, and we keep getting. We've always had a stickiness. Once we've engaged, the people that have used us have always been great fans of ours, which is an amazing place for us to be. And so for us, it's always been about exposure. We need to move up in the ranks, the C levels in bigger companies. And as we have done that, they start to hand us off to the next friend. And at some point that, I call it the triangle of trust. You get enough of the trust agents in place that you naturally can just have the conversation. People go, okay, let's do it. And, we were way too far from the market when we started this. It was all great concepts, but AI wasn't around. People weren't really talking about experience-based research. Everybody's like, well, I'm going to spend my money on monkey clicks. I need my net promoter score better. There was just all the money was going in other locations. So, we love to be that early stage startup. We're a little beyond that, but we're now just driving that growth hockey stick curve, and so it's good and bad. Like it's austere in ways, but also we're way more smart than we would have been if we'd ran it quick. And I've got a couple other stories where I've been in other ones that ran quick, took a lot of money, and $6 million later they're not here anymore. I got a great T-shirt, a really expensive coffee mug that has a new sticker on it. This is not the company, but this is the cup.
I think we all have those stories.
Yeah,
so I think there's a couple things. I think there's a couple things that are interesting in that. Like I've struggled to see a lot of service businesses pivot to product. So if you can do it, awesome. And I think the way you're doing it's pretty pragmatic, where it's like maybe there's always a human touch element to it, and there's more product behind it just to make sure there's that experience. But on the flip side, you could see yourself optimizing an API for different verticals. And saying the domain expertise we have, here's a stack that you can go do, and it's an API that you can integrate into whatever tools you're using otherwise, and really basically just pay on API calls over time. I don't know if that's part of your thought process, but to me, it seems like going horizontal in this is going to be harder to scale versus finding some big areas of deep domain expertise where the value isn't in the technology, it's in the domain expertise plus the technology.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And, we're taking care of the baby, and the baby can look like what the baby's going to look like. We're going to grow it, and I say I'd love to be a SaaS model, but I also have watched the just leanness in that model now. Everybody wants to be the next Google. Well, that was back there. Like what the next thing looks like is not going to be that. And with AI on the front, like we're talking in the next 2 or 3 years, I think we have to be very adaptive in new tech companies, what that means. And so I love all your thinking. The API strategy, like middleware strategy, has definitely been banted around. I could also see us becoming, to your point, domain channels almost in the human connection of tech to the businesses, where we could have more professional services angles on this, and there's a lot of good companies that have done a little bit of both, and we may have to do that before it's over with. But if we're going to stay in the services and tech place, we're going to have to vertical. We're going to have to be very thin on the angle we go after, because if we get too broad, we're just going to cover too much bandwidth to have too many head count to get it done. And so it's picking the right battles and winning some of those that's going to matter to us.
So maybe talk to me about the domain expertise. You talked about like you have some expertise in house on some of these verticals. I think we talk about it with our founders all the time, niching down, right? Go to a smaller beachhead and basically create more value. And, there was somebody on the podcast a little while ago that was basically in marketing for HR CRMs, like super nichey, but like she turned an entire business. She's got, 5 or 6 people, and she's going to expand from that. But that's the place she started. And she became the expert in that area, the right vernacular, and they just cleaned it up, and now is expanding off of that.
Yeah, I think it's a thoughtful statement. We in part we've been waiting for the market to mature in this space of experience, and we've spent some time in a couple of them. Tourism was a good example, and it's a pretty good market. I'm not sure it's the best experience market for us compared to, like, say, healthcare, right? And so part of this is winning the right deals to put yourself into that space and to have the referential sales path to go with it. And so there's been that organic components to it, but also we've done a lot of fractional connection. Like we brought in people from experience space that could help us in a domain, at a fractional level that where everybody's kind of paying for their time at the table. And although it's great to have some full employees, it's also been brilliant to our business to have the wisdom come in from people with the skill set that we couldn't afford otherwise to spend 20 hours a week with us for 6 months, let's say, and put us into a space. So I think we will have to pick a couple domains, and we do ride a couple. Healthcare is obviously a really good one. We're getting a ton off just HR, right? Like you said, HR is really an easy. I don't like the word easy because nothing's easy. But
easy.
recruiting, for example, can be a cleaner path for companies. And if you're getting into a big corporation, well, I mean, it's a good way for them to understand what the technology does. At the same time, if it's a big corporation, you got firewalls, you got asset reviews. It's like, hey, we're not running it. If you're going to run this inside of our business, I'm not running inside your business. Well, I still want you to do an audit. Dude, you're trying to kill me with that audit. I can't do that audit, right? Like, there's just all those normal things that I used to tell people at the IT company that I watched a lot of partners dash at the rocks of our their ships crash on the rocks of our corporation trying to get in the door, right? It's so easy to get crushed as you try to climb those bigger steps. So, hopefully we're bringing the skill sets to step by step, get it right. But yeah, I think we see a couple of those markets coming forward, and the next 6 deals will solidify that.
You don't have to go deep if this isn't, but like CPG, it seems like a space too that would be good. Like they're always talking about like a new Swiffer or a new thing, new razor, or they're creating a new marketplace. They do this, and they've done this for a long time. And I think what you're doing in a lot of cases is taking that concept, democratizing it to a whole bunch of different industries that have never had that discipline in the past.
I am dying for more CPG. I think we would crush in that space.
Yeah, I do too.
It's really a function of how we're selling still. We're doing a lot of our selling through tech. We don't have a big sales force. And so, and he gets a sigh from me, like, you got me with the CPG, because I know that space from my past life, and I know the scale at which this could play out. And so we've had a couple deals, and we have some in the pipeline right now I'm really excited about. So I'm hoping that like I said, we need that good sponsor in that space that goes, wow, you just changed the world. You just literally changed the way everybody does this. And that's when the afterburners kick.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, maybe towards the end of this here, the last question I'd have for you is, you're in Virginia, I'm in South Dakota. We're doing tech-related things. We're not in big tech centers. So, and both of us spent some time, working in some of those centers, and decided to go back and quit the traffic and travel back and forth. Maybe talk to me about the benefits or, some of the advantages of not being in Silicon Valley.
I caught a lot more fish this year than, no, I'm kidding. And that is true.
No.
Actually, it was a horrible year. It was a horrible year. I won't get into that. That's a 30-minute discussion, but the Chesapeake Bay was a little hurt this year. But I actually was in a plane and flying all over the world. I weighed about 30 plus pounds more than I do right now. And I was killing myself and making a ton of money. But I don't think I'd still be, frankly, I don't think I'd still be alive. I think I was heading in a path that was just killing me. It was fun, though. It was so intense. And I sat down with the president. I was supposed to give him a 10-minute meeting on something. And he goes, hey, let's spend the day, or let's spend an hour talking about you. And I'm like, oh, this is the best meeting of my life. And this was in San Francisco. I'm like, hey, cool, let's talk about meetings with the president. This is cool. And it was a pretty good meeting, except at the end he goes, so when you moving out to San Francisco? And I'm like, well, I mean, I've run this global business unit from Richmond for years. I don't know that I need to come out here. And I was pretty much done. Everybody was, the president, the executive staff in Boston was having to move out there, right? Like it was, everybody was being forced out. And I think the reason is, if you look at the Asian countries you got all these rural space, and they have these massive cities, right? And they were starting to look at how the world play out was going to happen, and they needed to figure out where our massive cities in America were going to be, or in the U.S. And so you saw Austin going away, you saw Dallas going away, you saw Boston going away. New York was going to barely hang on. And, I was like, I don't like this at all. Like this is This is not the world I want to live in. We have brilliant people all over the world, and technology connects us in all the ways we need to. Like,
Right.
I've been a remote COVID user since the 90s. Like, I've been on computer screens like this forever, and it's never hurt my deliverables. And so, anyway, I think what I found by being in Virginia has been, I've found a place to raise my family. I have the technology to connect. It is a little more, the network's obviously not as good. And some of my friends that run some of the biggest companies in the world don't take my calls because I don't have a context to call them. And, I don't try to call them, but, so my network, it might be brilliant, but I can't use it like I used to because I'm not playing on that scale.
Yeah.
That's fine because I'm healthy, happy, and, my kids are growing up here and grandkids. So it's a blast. I think this world, like, I just talked to somebody and they were like, I was in Vietnam. There was these 4,000 guys doing AI over there. It's like the technology is democratizing. We don't need to consolidate to a single spot to be successful at this. And I will end that statement with invest locally. Get time with somebody. Walk the street, shake a hand. Don't do it all in tech. Your job isn't that important. I've done it for a career, and I can tell you those that take a little time for everybody else are better grounded. They advance better. They have a better impact on the world. Like, just make some connection with where you are. And if you're in a different place, that's even better because we need you in every one of those spots.
Yeah, I think that's good. And maybe I'll just kind of summarize a little bit. I mean, I hear quality of life. That's a big one, and that's why we moved back to South Dakota. I think the one downside that I would say that I haven't really figured out, or I have to make a more conscious effort, is people that can actually sharpen me, right? Like, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but like basically, in my community, people like go, "You're amazing," and I'm like, "I'm not." I'm like, I'm doing something, but like if I was in Seattle or if I was in Silicon Valley, there'd be like 15 people telling me how to make it better, and I miss that. And I had it in Seattle. But like, it's context. And sometimes when there's not that high density of people that are doing something similar that can't sharpen each other, it's definitely one of the areas that part of the reason why I like doing this podcast, right? You get to meet a whole bunch of people that I never would have met. And so I'm curious about how you do that in your world.
Man, that is brilliant. That is, and it is a struggle. You're absolutely right. And, it's the opposite for me. Like, I'll be sitting in the audience of a meeting going on, a bunch of people talking about AI locally. And they all got mics and acting important. And I'm like going, none of you know anything about what you're talking about. Like, I'm the only guy in the room that knows what he's talking about. I'm sitting down here and not saying a word. It's just like, it's the stupid can get at you sometimes. So I do keep my network open. And that's not only for just professional sharpness, but like, the social world right now, the world is so digitally noisy that, one thing I find just being able to connect globally and hearing context, even if it's just someone sharing pictures of their lakefront or if it's a buddy drawing some art or something, like, I just like having as many connections out as I can. And so I matter of fact, I guess, what I'm adding to my list, I'm call Todd for sharpening. Like, I think it's a great idea.
I need it.
We need it. And we need challenging. Like, you hit me on a couple things today and made me go, you know what? I'm probably not, that's a really good point. And we need that. I mean, that's why great companies are great, because they have, people. I used to think about people we used to sell and win all the time. It was because we had so many sales reps that were so talented in every company that mattered. So when anything happened, it went back to sales management so quickly that, as long as you knew how to act to it, you'd win. You'd get out and get on that opportunity. So it's huge.
It is. Yeah. Well, Andy, I appreciate you just taking the time. I think there's a lot of interesting elements to this conversation. I think there's some good takeaways for founders. And I appreciate you just sharing your thoughts and wisdom and being super honest. So thank you for the conversation.
God, it's been a blast, man.
Okay. Well, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Startup Stories from the Treehouse. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you found our conversation helpful, leave a review. It really helps other founders discover our show. For more insight and episode summaries, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildfire Labs Substack. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you next time.